The only thing I can think of now is, oh my God, like whatever God you have, and if you don't have a God, find one. Oh my God, how lucky we are that we're here in shelter, no earthquakes, knock on wood, no nothing, in the middle of a fantastic event, surrounded by brilliant people. And if something happens, we've got Golan. So that's good. And another good news is we are going to talk about something way lighter, very banal. We're gonna even laugh if you feel like it, because we're going to be speaking about conflict in the workplace. 20% of executives' time, your time, my time, 20% is used to manage conflict in the workplace. Is it too much? Is it too little? What is it? Well, after what Golan said, it's nothing, give me more. But 20%, it's 1 day a week. Is it too much? Some of you would say, give me that day back. You know what I can do with 1 day? I can do a lot, I can get a lot of shit done. And not manage people's conflicts and like, let's do zero conflict, shall we? Someone here was saying, I avoid conflict. So I'm here today to tell you, conflict is actually not that bad. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. If well managed, if in the right amplitude, and if, but why do I say so? Because out of conflict, the biggest innovations, not only in our industry, but in the world have happened. We wouldn't have something as silly as like, we're young enough. Like the first scientific calculators, they wouldn't exist without a huge conflict back then. We wouldn't have the iPad looking as it looks right now. We wouldn't have Airbnb. We wouldn't have the V12. We wouldn't have the first Indigos. We wouldn't have half of the Heidelberg portfolio. We wouldn't have half of the Fuji portfolio. We wouldn't have half of what we have now if conflict wouldn't be there. And at the end of the session, tell me if you agree with me. I am going to try to keep it a bit theoretical and giving you a lot of materials that if you're interested after this session, you can go and read, but also practical in terms of my own experience. Let's start by defining what conflict is. Conflict is actually a separation of two or more positions generated and reinforced by the fear of losing something. And actually, neurologically, if you look at the brain of a guy that is under a danger and a guy that is under a conflict, even in the office, not life-threatening or anything, the brain looks very similar. And the same neuroactivators got activated. You go the fight or fright or freeze instinct, and it's the same. Our brain doesn't realize if it is a tiger running after us or if it is our boss telling us that the next product needs to be released half a year earlier. It's the same business for our brain. It's the same level of stress. And the fear that we experience when we have a conflict is fear. It's very basic fear. Is fear to lose my comfort, my privilege, my status, fear to lose money, fear to lose my ways, because my ways are good ways, are actually the best ways sometimes, right? Fear of losing my convictions, my privileges, even conflicts of losing my beliefs. I've always believed this, and now this guy comes and tells me it works the other way around. No, and then I put myself in that position. So conflict is all about this separation. And actually, we will see that managing conflict is only being aware of the gap between the two positions. Managing conflict is all about mining the gap, right? That's all we need to do, to mine the gap. And because most of you are engineers here, let's do a pretty good graph. Yes, the good yx square thing. So if on the horizon of the horizontal axis we have the distance of the gap, And in the vertical axis, we have the conflict intensity, the intensity of the conflict. We are very good with no conflict, no intensity, very close gap. Like Golan and I don't have a problem, we're very close to each other. But Nick and I are very far away, we have a super conflict, right? With Golan, we don't even need to speak. We agree or not, but what the fuck, I don't care. That's the problem. I don't care. There is silence, there is group thinking, everything is consensuated. Imagine if our next big product would be consensuated by 15 different engineers and no conflict. It would be a flop, I'm telling you now. Even the worst movies have a bit of a conflict in the script. The next one is manageable conflict, okay? The conflict that is okay, and within that area, we're already having a bit of intensity in the conflict. You have sometimes, some animated disagreement, and then it's one thing that we call the healthy conflict, where you operate well within that range really depends on your upbringing and very much on your country of origin. We Mediterraneans, I'm from Spain, with Israelis, with Turkish people, with Moroccans, with Italians, we actually like conflict. And when we hug, we kiss each other and we scream. And when we scream, we're just showing our happiness of being together because we will be able to fight again because we love each other. On the other side, we have the Japanese and Asian people. They really would die right now just by hearing the tone of my voice because it's very high pitched and very loud. So they are another completely opposite upbringing. Their values, the things that they live by and for are completely different, and conflict could kill them. So in here, I remember one day I was working at Indigo and I was in Israel. We were introducing one of our products, and we had our German product manager and our Israeli R&D team. And the Israeli R&D team, they were agreeing, but they were agreeing a la Israeli. They were agreeing, and they were agreeing very, very loud. And the German had to leave the room because he couldn't stand so much agreement. On the other hand, the healthy tension is, another example is when I was at Heidelberg, we were working together with our partner in Fuji in Japan. And that was my first experience with Japan and with Japanese people. And here it comes this Spaniard, used to work with Israelis, go to Japan to sell Prime Fire to Fuji. And I was with all my energy. They were the ones having to leave the room because I was agreeing too much with them. This is where we have to be very much aware of the upbringing, the culture, the beliefs, and be sensitive, because it doesn't matter how much you like conflict, you have to be aware of how much the other can stand your like for conflict. At HP, for many, many years, we had a general manager in the graphic arts who loved healthy tension. His word was, healthy tension brings attention. That has also been my motto for a lot of years, and it is true. Healthy tension, as much as you can brings attention, and not only attention, it brings innovation. And it is a direct correlation between the level of tension that a team can handle. If you bring them into this healthy zone, it's with this effect that Golan was saying at 3 a.m. Something sparks. Something out of the disagreement creates a third idea that is better than each of the two that we were presenting. This is what this healthy tension brings. The final part is the difficulty to manage. It's crisis. So believe it or not, in the 90s, a HP CEO even wrote a book saying, if it ain't broken, break it. He was all for, in your face, this is going to be crisis whether you like it or not. And that was a bestseller. Thank God the 90s are over. Even the shoulder pads are over. And this is not a business practice anymore, because that is difficult to manage. And that is where the performance on the teams go down. So why do we need a conflict? Apart from the fact that, in my experience, I can tell you it works always, that you keep yourself within what your culture allows you to be, from animated disagreement to highly healthy tension, is because there is a lot of literature about that. There is an amazing book that I can only recommend, is The Five Dysfunctions of Teams. This is a graph summarizing what this book is about. And who of you know this Maslow pyramid of the basic needs, right? These basic needs, you have to have food first, and then shelter, and then you can start thinking about your social integration. If you're very socially integrated but you're starving, it's not good. Here is the same. You have to have trust in your team to be a high-performance team. We will talk about trust later. And then you need conflict. A very trusted team that always agrees with each other is a team that only develops mediocre things. The group thinking is the cancer of technological and ideological innovation. That's why think tanks right now don't work, because they don't want to step on each other's toes, right? At the beginning, when think tanks were about open kimono, this is what I think, people could actually discuss ideas, and the new idea coming out of the discussion was better than any one of them. So as you can see, very low in the needs for high-performance teams, there is conflict. If you don't have conflict, what you're doing is you're avoiding the problems ahead of you and probably the problems behind you. You also are avoiding people, avoiding hearing new ideas, avoiding getting feedback, avoiding improvement, continuous improvement. And that is why we need conflict. But we can only have healthy conflict if we have trust. So we will go back to this one in a minute. First, I want to talk about the types of conflicts. And this is all in the workplace. How lucky are we that we don't have to jump into choppers and helicopters and go save people? This is just to survive 9 to 5 in the office, okay? Like, hallelujah. Types of conflict in the workplace based on the source of what the problem is. Sometimes we just have a silly conflict because we don't agree on the what. What do we have to do? What is it we have to do? We don't know. And it happens more often than not, especially in big corporations, not so much in startups and medium businesses. Sometimes we have a conflict on the how. That happens a lot. That is one of the most common parts. It's more than 40% of all the conflicts in the workplace come from the we're not agreeing on how to do things. My way is better than yours way better than his, and people, because of fear, get stuck in their positions. And until now, these have an easy resolution. Just explain what we're doing as a leader and explain how, or put together a team that is going to define how. Now the thing gets a bit more complicated. When the conflict comes from a lack of clarity on who does what, and who is who here again? One of the first things, in the first 90 days of a new company, the thing that you need to figure out is who, and where the toilets are. That's really it. That is already starting to touch the ego of the people, right? And that is where we are starting getting conflict that might stop being healthy. The last one is when it is personal. It really gets personal. And it's not even logical. So my mediation and arbitrage is the only solution for those in most cases. And that is one of those, like my example with the product manager in R&D in Israel, or my Fuji colleagues in my product management in Heidelberg. These have a lot to do with who we are and how our upbringing is. Then there is another type of conflict, but not by the source, but by the shape. Let me give you an example. This is the example. This is the problematic guy. Okay, there is that person that the whole team has a problem with. So an example of a conflict that was we don't agree on the how, and there is a guy who is the problem, is the reason why we have the iPad looking like the iPad is today. And that guy was Jobs. He was fighting absolutely every single living soul at Apple. He was fighting with the R&D guy. He was fighting with the materials guy. He was fighting to the design of the semiconductors seams. He was fighting on the form factor. He was fighting on absolutely everything. And he didn't got all right. He needed also to be told, your form factor is good, but your materials suck because you don't have any idea about materials. But that is one of a revolutionary technology that we have today that actually saw the light because of how we are not agreeing on how to do the iPad. We know we're going to do the iPad, but we don't know how it's going to be, and he's everybody's enemy. The other is when two guys fight with each other, right? This is the reason why this one, together with the conflict of what to do, is why we had the scientific calculators. Bill Hewlett and Dave Packard, one of them, Hewlett, he was walking through R&D one day in the oscilloscope division. And he saw one guy playing with a thing that he was doing on the weekends. So Google didn't invent that. He saw someone with something that was helping him instead of one of these things that they were using in the 70s or in the 60s. He had something like a little tiny computer doing sums and divisions and calculations. And he said, I want one. Division manager came and says, sorry, sir, this is not business-wise. It's not viable. The business case, market is not existent. Pricing would be impossible. Sorry, sir, it's not happening. But I want one. Sorry, sir, we can't just... Okay, yes, he wanted one. He got one. He got actually #1 sales for decades on that product. He had to... he got in conflict with that division manager and opened another division. Why? Because he was the boss. We're not always the boss when we have this type of conflicts. But it is good to see that out of a conflict between two people that didn't agree on what to do and what not to do, we actually got a great innovation that right now has evolved into huge computers. When these two guys get friends in the coffee corner and then they do bands, that is starting to become a battling field. And that gets more and more difficult. Well managed, that is the typical case of R&D and product management. We have that in all our organizations. And thanks to R&D and product management having a healthy relationship and sometimes killing themselves in the coffee corner, we have amazing technologies. That also happens with marketing and sales. They also fight a lot to each other, but at the end we have amazing events, great campaigns, and super good messaging that then our sales teams can use. And finally is chaos. Imagine something where everybody is blaming everybody and it got personal. Oh my God. Then you need professional help or just leave the company. If we were to put that in a matrix, right? The reasons why people have conflicts on the vertical axis and the shape of who the problem is 1, 2, a bunch, or everybody. this is the effort that it's going to take to you to solve that problem. If it's only one guy, figure out what's the problem. What is it that it's not clear to you? What's your motivation? Give visibility to that. And if he is right, through feedback and through coaching, sort it out. If he's not right, find him another place where he will be happier. If the problem is only we don't agree on what to do or how to do it, doesn't matter if it's one-to-one or two teams, clarify. It's all it takes. Be clear, make decisions, and communicate them. Now, if the thing starts getting more egocentric, if the thing starts getting about, so who is who? Are you above me? Am I below you? That is ego. That is becoming yellow-orange. With certain people, that is their sweet spot. I always say R&D people and salespeople are like opera divas. Some of them need to be opera divas. Their egos, when you touch their egos, is when they perform the most. So in those two functions, that area works very well for them. Now, you put a finance person or a legal person there, you just kill that person. An accountant in that situation, committing suicide, no wonder. But be clever about who in the company is in that area. If it gets personal, there is no green to be seen. This is always going to be edgy. This is always going to be not easy, not even for Israelis and Spaniards and Italians and Greeks. So that you're going to be needing to be a professional or bring consultancy to help you out. And if it's everybody blaming everybody about absolutely everything, I'm going to say, get the hell out of that company, okay? I've never seen one of those companies. I've never, ever seen something like this. But, theoretically, it could happen. So I'm going to finish with a very easy 5-steps process of how to manage conflict. All you need to do is bridge the gap. Didn't we say that conflict is just a separation between two or more positions? Let's mind the gap. Let's first of all understand their motivations. What is it coming from? Is it the what, the why, the who? Is it personal? Is it one person, two people? What is the structure? Let's understand it. And let's elevate ourselves. Let's look at it from above. As leaders, and even if we are part of that conflict, we need to elevate ourselves and analyze the meta-conflict, okay? It's very complicated when you are emotionally attached, but try to elevate yourself. First step, elevation. Second step, what you need to do is to clarify, especially if the problem is the what and the why. It's so easy as make the decision and communicate regularly, openly and transparent with all the channels that you have. And the more, the better. Third, feedback. Receiving feedback or giving feedback is an art. It's very complicated not to hurt people if you suck at giving feedback. And it's really very complicated not to take it personal if you are an ego-based person, or even if not. It's really hard to hear that you're not good at something. That's why learning how to get feedback is the first thing that we need to do. Don't try to give feedback with good intentions, without having a methodology behind. I will give you a methodology in a moment. The next one has to do with finding one agreement. Let's agree on how we're going to behave when we negotiate on or when we work together. We probably don't agree on the how, on the who, on the what. Probably we don't like each other, but let's agree on how we're going to treat each other. And because we're humans and we're very normally, thank you for the statistics, there are more good people than bad people in the world. Believe it or not, that is statistically proven. So because we're all good inside, we always are going to agree on being respectful, treating each other professionally. We all going to be agreeing on, okay, let's treat confidential information confidential. There are always basic things that we can agree on, and that is the first of our agreements. If we agree on a set of rules of engagement and a series of behaviors, let's put the team before us personally. Okay, that is something normally people agree to do. That is when we are we are finding the first of the connections of closing that gap to finally reach the psychologically safety. Only if someone feels psychologically safe in an environment is able to speak up, is able to share that idea that I just had on at 3 a.m. It's the one that can criticize something that could be just better and saves us from having a mediocre product or service. That is only with psychological safety when people speak up and is not worried about failing. If you are obsessed about not failing because it's something that your organization doesn't allow, because it's not safe where you are, you're always going to not even plan for the 80%, you're planning for the 50%, just in case. You're not going to give your most because what if I screw up? It's really dangerous out there. So psychologically safety is one of the last steps, and that is the one that builds the trust, which is the foundation of our pyramid that we showed before, in order to have healthy conflict and not any other kind of conflict, and become a high-performance team. The best thing that can happen to your teams is that at the end, they feel like innovation is built on failures, and they can fail every time as long as they don't fail twice on the same topic, and they learn and learn and learn. And that is why we have calculators, iPads, Airbnb, which is another of those amazing stories of conflict between industries and individuals and groups. We have a wonderful world. We live in the 21st century, which is the world of innovation. Imagine if out of this room, all our 100+ teams now take conflict not with fear, but with hope that is going to be the mean to become more innovative. And that is the best insurance for this industry to be there forever and ever. Amen. So these are my 8 books that I wanted to recommend to you. The 5 Dysfunctions of the Team, Forming, Storming, Norming and Performing, Theory of Group Forming, Good to Great, best book I've ever read on business principles, especially for leaders and executives. The Harvard Business Review on dealing with conflict, the Airbnb story, it's just fascinating. If things got on the wrong side of the edge, then you need the next one, Conflict Resolution Playbook. This is the next level in the video game. Let's talk. Best book on learning how to give feedback and receive feedback, very important. And finally, the book that opened my eyes and many of my friends' eyes. No, it's not you. You are surrounded by idiots. With this, I hope you apply some of these learnings, some of these experiences in your teams, for your sake, for your team's sake, for the industry's sake. And just remember, in case of conflict, keep calm and mind the gap. Thank you.